Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Calvin. Marriage, at least in my experience, has always felt like a balancing act. You do what you think is right, you take on responsibilities, and you assume your partner sees the effort you're putting in. From the moment Lydia and I got married, I naturally took the lead in keeping things organized. It wasn't something we ever sat down and decided on. It just happened. Bills needed to be paid, so I handled them. The house needed maintenance, so I took care of it. If something broke, I either fixed it myself or called someone who could. It wasn't that Lydia was incapable, she just didn't seem interested in those things, and I didn't mind taking them on. It felt like my role. I just assumed we had an unspoken agreement. I handled the logistics, and she handled other things. But over time, I started to notice little things slipping through the cracks on her end. Missed appointments. Forgotten tasks. Little things left undone. I figured she was just busy or distracted, so I did what I thought was helpful. I reminded her. If there was a bill due, I'd ask if she had paid it. If something needed to be scheduled, I'd check in to make sure she had set a date. If she mentioned wanting to do something around the house, I'd follow up later to see if she had gotten around to it. To me, it was simple communication, a way to keep things on track. But to Lydia, it felt like control. She never outright said it at first, but I could see the irritation in her face whenever I asked her about something. Her sighs got louder. Her responses got shorter. She started brushing me off with, "Yeah, I'll get to it," in a tone that made it clear she was tired of hearing me ask. I didn't understand it. Why was it such a big deal? I was just making sure things got done. But to Lydia, my reminders felt like orders. Like I didn't trust her to handle things on her own. I never meant to make her feel that way. But the more I tried to help, the more she pulled away. She started delaying things on purpose, waiting until the last possible minute to handle something, just so she wouldn't have to hear me ask about it. I could feel the resentment building in her, but I didn't know how to fix it. In my mind, I was doing what any responsible husband would do, but in hers, I was treating her like a child who needed to be managed. And the worst part? I didn't see the explosion coming. It happened on a night that started out just like any other. We had finished dinner, and I was clearing the table while Lydia scrolled through her phone, half listening as I went through a few things that needed handling. It was just small reminders. I mentioned that the internet bill was due for renewal soon and asked if she had taken care of it yet. But the moment the words left my mouth, I could feel something shift in the air. She sighed, setting her phone down. "Why do you always do this?" she muttered under her breath. I blinked, caught off guard. "Do what?" I asked, genuinely confused. She turned to face me fully, her expression already set in frustration. Constantly reminding me, nagging me, acting like I can't handle my own life without you hovering over me. "I don't need you making decisions for me, Calvin. I'm not your property." Her voice rose in anger. "I can handle my things without you constantly reminding me like I'm your servant." I stood there, completely stunned. I had never thought of myself as someone who controlled her. I had never spoken to her like she was beneath me. Everything I did was meant to help, to make sure things didn't slip through the cracks. I opened my mouth to say something, to defend myself, but nothing came out. What was I even supposed to say? That I was just trying to keep things in order? That I didn't see her as a servant but as my partner? Would she even believe me? Instead, I just stood there, feeling the weight of her words settle in. If she truly felt this way, what was the point in arguing? She clearly didn't see my reminders as help. She saw them as control, as an insult to her independence. If that was the case, then maybe I had been wrong this whole time. Maybe I had been pushing too much, even without realizing it. So I did something I never would have done before. I took a deep breath, nodded once, and simply said, "All right." That was it. No argument, no defense, no justification. Just all right. I don't know if she had expected me to push back, to fight for my side of things. But I didn't. I just wiped my hands on a dish towel, walked over to the couch, and sat down in silence. If she wanted independence, she could have it. She wanted control. So, I gave it to her. No more reminders. No more checking in to see if she had scheduled an appointment or handled a bill. I no longer ask if something around the house needed fixing. If I saw the gas gauge in her car dipping dangerously low, I didn't say a word. It wasn't easy at first. I had spent years naturally stepping in, keeping things on track, making sure everything ran smoothly. There were moments when I almost spoke up out of habit, but every time, I reminded myself she wanted this. At first, Lydia seemed to thrive in her newfound independence. She didn't have me hovering over her shoulder, asking if she had handled something. She could go about her day without being reminded of deadlines or responsibilities. I could tell she enjoyed the freedom, the sense that she was completely in charge of herself. She started making decisions without consulting me, which was fine. She scheduled appointments when she felt like it, handled things at her own pace, and didn't feel obligated to update me on what she was doing. It was like she had been waiting for this, a chance to prove that she didn't need me managing things. But independence, I realized, wasn't the same as preparedness. Without me nudging her, small things started slipping through the cracks. She missed a payment on a subscription she had meant to cancel, only realizing it when the charge hit her account and they had no refund policy. She scheduled a work meeting at the same time she had a doctor's appointment, something I would have caught if I had been reminding her to check her calendar. Little inconveniences, nothing disastrous, yet. She brushed them off, moving forward with a confidence that I admired, even as I saw the warning signs. I said nothing. I didn't step in. The first real problem came with the electric bill. She had forgotten to renew the payment, and one afternoon, she came home to find the power shut off. I remember how she stormed into the living room, phone in hand, frustration written all over her face. "The power's out. Did you forget to pay it?" she asked, as if this was still my responsibility. I looked up from my laptop and answered calmly, "No. The bill's under your name. You were supposed to renew it." The shift in her expression was quick, shock, then irritation, then something else. Embarrassment, maybe. Without another word, she turned away and called the power company, trying to sort it out. I could hear the impatience in her voice as she navigated the automated system, her sighs growing heavier with every passing minute. Then came the car trouble. She had been driving it every day, completely unaware that it was overdue for servicing, something I usually kept track of. She didn't notice the warning signs, the rough idling, the occasional jerking when she accelerated. It wasn't until the check engine light blinked on that she realized something was wrong. By the time she finally took it in, the mechanic told her that what could have been a simple service had now turned into a more expensive repair. That one hit her harder than the power bill. She didn't say much when she got home that night, just slammed her keys on the table and sat there in silence. I knew what she was thinking. If I had still been the one handling these things, the issue would have never escalated. But she wasn't going to admit that. Not yet. Her stress started creeping into other areas of her life, especially work. She had always been organized. But now, without my reminders, she was missing things she never used to miss. One evening, I walked into the kitchen to find her staring blankly at her laptop screen, the glow reflecting in her tired eyes. I asked if she was okay, and she let out a sharp sigh before saying, "I forgot to schedule an important deadline. It's too late now." She didn't look at me when she said it. She just sat there, drumming her fingers against the counter, her frustration obvious. I won't lie, watching her struggle wasn't easy. There were so many moments where I had to bite my tongue, moments where I wanted to step in and remind her, to fix things before they got worse. But every time the urge came, I reminded myself of what she had said that night. I wasn't doing this to punish her. I just didn't see the point in forcing help on someone who didn't want it. Still, there was something unsettling about it. I didn't feel good about watching her stumble through things she used to handle with ease. But at the same time, I didn't feel responsible anymore. That was the real difference. Before, if she forgot something, I saw it as my problem. Now, it was her problem. And honestly, that realization gave me a strange sense of relief. As the weeks went by, the tension in the house became impossible to ignore. We weren't fighting, not in the way we used to. But we weren't really talking either. It was like we had become strangers, living under the same roof. The warmth that had once been there, the easy conversations, the casual laughter, all of it was gone. Lydia withdrew into herself. She spent more time in the bedroom, scrolling through her phone or working late at the dining table. When we did speak, it was short and clipped, like two coworkers exchanging the bare minimum information necessary to get through the day. There was no more, "How was your day?" No more, "What do you want for dinner?" It was just silence, stretched so thin that it felt suffocating. I knew she was resenting me. She didn't say it outright, but I could feel it. She had expected me to push back, to fight her on this, to keep stepping in even after she told me not to. She thought I would eventually break and go back to handling everything like before. But I didn't. I just let things play out. And that frustrated her more than anything. One night, as I was watching TV, she walked past me and stopped near the kitchen. I could tell she wanted to say something. She lingered for a moment, then shook her head and went to bed without a word. I didn't follow her. I just sat there, staring at the dark screen, feeling the weight of the distance between us. One night, everything finally came to a head. The house was quieter than usual. I was sitting at the kitchen table, absent-mindedly scrolling through my phone, while Lydia stood by the sink, staring down at an empty coffee mug as if it held the answers to all our problems. She had been more distant than ever lately, going through the motions of daily life without saying much. But tonight, something felt different. At first, she didn't say anything. She just stood there, her back to me, gripping the edge of the counter. Then, without warning, a quiet sob broke through the silence, and she covered her face with both hands as if she was trying to stop herself from completely falling apart. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. Her voice was shaky, fragile, so unlike the strong-willed woman I had married. I set my phone down and watched her for a moment, feeling unsure of what to do. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when she would finally acknowledge that things weren't working. But now that it was here, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. Lydia took a deep breath, but her voice was still unsteady when she spoke again. I never meant that I didn't need you." She wiped at her face angrily, as if she was frustrated with herself for breaking down in front of me. I just didn't want to feel like an obligation. For a long time, I didn't respond. So this was what it had all been about. Her fear of being a burden, of feeling like she was being managed instead of loved. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. "Lydia, I never saw you as an obligation." My voice was calmer than I felt. "I never thought of you as property or someone I had to control. I just thought I was being responsible. I thought I was helping. But you," I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "You made it seem like everything I did was about power, like I enjoyed telling you what to do. That was never the case." She sniffed and turned to face me, her eyes red and filled with regret. "I know," she admitted. I think I got so caught up in wanting to prove myself that I convinced myself you were the enemy. And that wasn't fair." I nodded slowly, absorbing her words. It wasn't easy to hear, but it was honest. And for the first time in weeks, it felt like we were finally saying what needed to be said. We sat at the table for hours, talking about everything we had ignored for too long. Lydia admitted that she had underestimated just how much I had taken on in our marriage. She had always assumed things got done because they had to, but now she realized how much of that responsibility had fallen on me. She confessed that, at first, she had enjoyed the freedom of handling things on her own, but as time went on, she started feeling overwhelmed. She didn't want to ask for help because she was afraid it would prove that she couldn't handle it. I listened. And when it was my turn, I told her the truth about how I had felt. I admitted that, yes, I could have trusted her more. I could have backed off sooner instead of constantly reminding her about things. But at the same time, I told her that I had felt unappreciated for a long time. I had never minded taking the lead, but the way she dismissed my effort made me feel like my love was being mistaken for control. That was what hurt the most. By the end of the conversation, there were no dramatic apologies, no promises to be perfect from here on out, just an understanding of what needed to change. We agreed that things had to be different moving forward. I would stop micromanaging, but she had to communicate when she needed help instead of letting things fall apart. She would take more initiative, but I still needed to feel valued in our marriage. It wasn't about one of us winning or losing. It was about finding balance. For the first time in what felt like forever, the tension in the room lifted. We weren't magically fixed, but we had finally stopped pretending everything was fine. And that at least was a start. In the days that followed, things didn't magically snap back to normal. There were still moments of hesitation, where Lydia would start to ask me something but stop herself, unsure if she should. And there were times when I caught myself wanting to remind her about something, only to take a breath and let it go. We were relearning how to be a team, and that wasn't going to happen overnight. But slowly I started to notice real change. Lydia became more proactive, taking responsibility for things she had once ignored or assumed I would handle. She scheduled her own appointments without needing a reminder. She kept track of bills, set reminders for herself, and even took the car in for service without waiting for me to say something first. It wasn't that she had suddenly transformed into a different person. It was just that now she understood that these things mattered. At the same time, I learned to step back. I was still there, still present and involved, but not in a way that made her feel like I was hovering. If she asked for help, I gave it. If she needed support, I provided it. But I no longer felt the pressure to carry everything on my own. For the first time in a long time, our marriage didn't feel like a one-sided effort. We had found our middle ground. Lydia had the independence she wanted, and I had the partnership I had always hoped for. And most importantly, we had respect, not just for each other, but for the roles we played in each other's lives. Looking back, I realize now that love was never about control. It was about support. I had spent so much time trying to make sure things were running smoothly that I didn't see how much my efforts made her feel like she had no say in our life together. And she had spent so much time pushing back against my involvement that she didn't see how much I just wanted to be appreciated. We almost lost each other because of it. But thankfully, we figured it out before it was too late. And that's our story for today. Let us know what you think of this story. You can share your experience to encourage someone or share this story with someone. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Until next time,